If AI comes as peers and they can do everything, would that mean that it will shrink my work? It might just work in a very opposite way. It could also become that we all get more busy because now, all of a sudden, all of us have these assistants. Take more risks in life. Don't fear away from that. The worst would have happened is I would have failed and I would have learned.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Visible. I've got the very lovely Parinita here with me.
Being visible is you getting acknowledgement for the work that you're trying to do. Ultimately, we all want to be remembered. If you are coming into engineering at 2026, you have so much at your disposal. You have these great LLM models, these AI tools, these code assist tools, they're going to be there. They are the future. Another piece of advice I would actually give to young people is socialize. Just don't be boxed behind your laptops.
This episode coming up next on the Visible podcast. Stay tuned.
What goes behind building great tech and bringing it to the world? It's the marketing, the product, the design, the engineering. But most importantly, it is the humans behind it. Welcome to The Visible, where we bring you the stories behind tech. The wins, the realizations, the mistakes, and the lessons. The stories that show you how great ideas really come to life. We bring you the stories behind tech so you can build, lead, and tell your story better. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Visible. I've got the very lovely Parinita here with me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. We met a few weeks ago, I think, where, you were part of a panel that we were running. And, we got talking about, so many things like your journey into tech, how you've gotten into public speaking and all of those things. So I think just then I was like, you'd be great for this conversation. So I'm so glad you said yes, and I'm so excited to have this conversation. Welcome to the show. If you can just share with everyone a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and also how you got to be where you are right now.
Yeah, so I started my career, I think, more than 15, 16 years back. After a point, you just stop counting yourself. But over these years, I feel like I've played different hats, mostly within engineering. So I've been helping different industries and different organizations to solve their business problems, specifically using data and engineering as well. So I've been in roles which has been more associated towards analytics, towards data science, machine learning. And currently, I'm trying to work on the infrastructure side of the things of what it means to actually move some of your monolithic and legacy applications into public cloud, and what are the right building blocks you actually need to do your analytics, AI, and machine learning use cases for the organizations.
Perfect. So it sounds like you're definitely doing a lot of really cutting edge things as well. It's really good to know. So when you describe your role to people, firstly, I would love to know what your day-to-day actually looks like. And when you describe to friends and family, what people actually think that you do.
So my title is that of an engineering lead. And I think from the outside, people often think that as an engineering leader, you're just doing engineering. But the truth is you are actually solving the problems for the business, and you're solving problems for the customers, and you are using your engineering expertise to do that. Just using engineering expertise doesn't mean it's only about, writing the codes or doing the system designs, what a lot of people associate with. But it's also about solving two other key critical problems as well, which is around the process side of things and also the people side of things as well for the organizations. So on the process side of things, you will see that, maybe writing the code is probably 20%. And then, there's this whole long period that it takes to actually test what you have built. It takes a long time to actually go and move that into production. And there's a lot of different teams, different dependencies, and different kind of process you have to go through. And those processes could be around compliance and governance. It could be around you just getting, you connecting your piece of work that you're doing with all the other systems and applications in the bank. It could be about connecting with your customers who've asked for that. So it's about how we are actually using engineering to even solve that process side of things as well and make it more streamlined. And then the other part is the people side as well. So engineering, obviously, you need the right people. And nothing is really static in the whole technology field. Things are constantly changing. So there's also an element about you have to think about how you are upskilling your existing your workforce and your colleagues you're working with, but at the same time, how you're also attracting the right kind of talent as well. So I feel all of this three different verticals like technology, people, process, it kind of is like a combination of what any leader would do and exactly what an engineering leader does as well.
Yeah.
And I think this is what pretty much my work life looks like as well. So, you're not just only solving one kind of problems, but it's always a mix of problems that is thrown at you, and you're kind of like trying to work on that.
Yeah.
And smashing on those
Yeah, it
things.
sounds like you're doing a lot of things all together, like trying to juggle it all. Engineering leading, is that something that you always wanted to sort of get into, or how did you fall into this path? Because I'm always curious, how people end up in different like technology fields.
I kind of knew that this was my calling, but I obviously started my career like long back. And when you are early on in your career, you really want to work on the base level things, right? What are the building blocks? What are the concepts that you really need to be clear on? And more importantly, with that, you also need a lot of exposure of what it means working with different stakeholders, working in very complex projects and also complex environments which are constantly moving as well. So as you keep doing that, you don't realize, but inevitably you're building the skills to juggle between a lot of different things. So you're solving your technical problems, but you're also solving the problems for the stakeholders. You're also solving very niche business problems as well. So as you gradually keep, doing this and getting better, I think at a point in your life, you feel like, you've got enough now that you want to lead and you also want to inspire and use that experience to bring about change within the organization. And I think at some point I knew this was my calling.
Yeah.
So I wanted to apply for roles, and it so happened that I was selected for one of those. And now it's been a few years I've been doing that, and I think it's I couldn't have asked for anything else.
I'm so happy for you. I think just finding your calling is such a hard thing, right? Like, because we all grow up in life not knowing what we want to do. And it kind of changes as well. Like, as you go through life, your calling kind of changes as well. So I'm glad that, you kind of found something you're passionate about as well. I'm always interested to talk to like a fellow leader, because I went through a leadership journey, and I think it is one of those things that, no one really prepares you for. There's so much that's involved. I'm always curious to hear, was there something that was really unexpected when you stepped into a leadership role that you kind of went, this is not something that I've expected, or something that you really, really enjoy about the role? Like the two sides of that. I'd love to hear from your perspective, like how
There's
you find
always two sides or many sides to everything that you get into, right? So yes, there were a lot of things that you can't really prep yourself up. It's just because, when you are moving, not only in a leadership position, but even from one role to another role in different domain as well, right? You are now all of a sudden encountering very different problems that were not really very local and very obvious to you when you were a level down, right? So that you just have to, use your expertise that you have built. You also have to constantly upskill yourself. You have to also have good mentors and good people in the team as well who are kind of like helping you out in figuring out what that journey is going to look like. So it's not like everything is going to be as you kind of like thought so. And there were a few things which I kind of knew would happen, and I knew what I wanted to do in those scenarios as well. But the idea was like, how do you also try implementing things in a different way as well? Because there's so much which is changing within the industry. You have technology which is changing, then you have different providers who are selling you different products at every cost. The people are changing as well. With the new Gen Z coming in, they have very different expectations, how they want to operate. Business has different expectations as well, right? So it's just making sure that you are being very aware about things. And oftentimes what has helped for me personally is like you learn a lot when you're working and you're on the go, but you also have to complement that by also reading what is really happening outside as well, maybe, building the right kind of connections. And you get to learn so much, which in a way kind of is going to help you, imply that and apply that in your organization.
No, you're very right. Like, it's not just about sort of doing things internally, but bringing knowledge that you can get externally. And networking, as you said, is such a big part of it, because when you speak to like fellow leaders and even in a different industry, you can really sort of get so much from them. So that's a really great point that you mentioned. I think the other thing is also like, especially with engineering and with leadership, Measuring success can be quite an interesting thing. Like, how do you measure success? So I'll maybe break this down in two parts. Like, as an engineering leader, like from the engineering perspective, how do you measure success in your role or in your team?
So what I've seen in my personal experience is like, oftentimes you're involved and you're working in very complex projects which has a lot of moving elements. And it's not just you, but you're working with a big team and a lot of people, right? And in those scenarios, different people in the team would be playing a different role. And sometimes they can also become very siloed in that little piece of work which they are doing. So what is really important is like your team is always aware about, what problem they're trying to solve and why they are trying to solve this problem. And of course, we all do that, when we are starting a project or we're starting a new initiative, everybody's aligned. But what really helps is in making sure that these things are reinforced and again and again. And as a leader, you need to spot the opportunities when you feel like your team members are drifting or they've become so involved for all the right reasons into their piece of work that it's like maybe taking them, distracting them, and what the actual goal of the work was. So why they were doing that work and, what problem they were solving. So you need to reinforce these things. And then basic things like, if you're doing that and you might be meeting and arranging your daily stand-ups with your team members as well. And in stand-ups, you usually see people talk about what they're going to be working on today, what the blockers are. But the key thing to observe is like, how much observation your team is also bringing in those stand-ups as well. Because it's about the nuances, like, have they observed something? Have they thought about something, and are they really bringing that to the table as well to a wider audience so that it becomes something that can trigger everyone's mind as well. And then the third thing is like, once these observations are brought about, what are your team members really doing about that? Are they going offline and really connecting on that? And they want to maybe, deep dive a bit more and work on that. And if you see like, if your team kind of knows the what and why very well, the how comes easily. And if they are being observant about things and they are being proactive about, what they're observing, whether it's a problem, whether it's a statement, and following up, you know that your team is eventually going to do very well. Whether it takes them a short time or a long time, but the quality of product that they're going to produce is going to be really, really good because everybody is engaged in that process and people don't feel disconnected. And there's a good team ownership over there as well.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you kind of leaned into like the behavioral and the collaborative aspect of success because, often when people think about success, it's very much about, was the project delivered or did we release a feature? All of like those kind of things because engineering is so much about like the end goal of building something. And I think I really liked how as a leader, you kind of touched really more about like what your team's getting out of it and, the collaboration and the fact that they have an opportunity to kind of really showcase, their learnings and, kind of work with their peers and things. I think it's something that sometimes we forget as business leaders because I guess we all have deliverables and we all have tangential things for the business that we need to deliver, but it is so much about the people piece. And engineering is such a creative field as well, right?
Absolutely, because I think there's a lot of emphasis given on KPIs and the metrics and everything. And I think that has a very, very huge importance as well on, how much time you're spending. But ultimately, like that, when you are solving a problem through engineering, there are so many moving parts to it. Sometimes you're just stuck because, the product you're using is not at the right maturity. Sometimes you're really stuck because, you have dependencies on some other things which are really not working out well. So they are not always the truth, what I'm trying to say. What you also have to assess along with those KPI and metrics is like how your team is really performing. Because if they are well informed, if they have a right bonding in place, you are for sure that the quality of the output, not just the quantity, is going to be really good.
Yeah. No, that's very true. You also work with AI, which I think is so top of mind for everyone. And being an engineering leader, coming into like the space of, AI now, I know you've done like, ML for a while. So you've kind of seen probably the progression of how the industry has changed. Is it actually changing how things are being done internally just for you as an engineering leader? What has AI changed for you?
The AI that we have been talking about for a long, long time, right? So a lot of people say artificial intelligence always kind of existed. We were always, trying to solve very vertical and very specific problems using machine learning and all of that. And we were doing great predictions, and all of this was working very, very well. But I think the difference with this general intelligence is like that we've built something that doesn't require a lot of coding, and it's so general in a way that you can solve maybe hundreds of problems with that same LLM model that you couldn't do before. Like in the past days, we've written, regression models, classification models, and they were very good at solving that particular problem. But if you were to take that same model and apply it in a different domain or even in a different task, it would completely fail. Now, that's the difference with the AI that we see today, the large language models, if that is what we are referring to, right? Yeah. That has been trained on so much of high quality data and compute that it is being able to solve lots and lots of problems. And that is why you see there's been a huge awareness and eagerness all over the industry for that, right? Yeah. So that has been, I think, a game changer for many, many organizations. Now, the challenge is how proactively you actually adapting that. Yeah. Now, the three different areas where you will see a lot of popularity is like there's lots of chatbots coming up. There's lots of customer services coming up. And they have always been like areas where we had been trying to apply a lot of other machine learning models. So they were naturally like use cases. You wanted to use large language model. It can understand, knowledge very well. It can understand the context, and it can give you a very sensible reply back as well. So that is where it's happening. Then the other area is the productivity side of things as well. So everybody is now using, whether it's at work or personally, we are using ChatGPT to be our co-assistant when we want to know something. We want to summarize an email. We want just, quick summaries of whatever we want to comprehend as well, right? So that is also happening in the organizations. Now, the third part is where I think there's a lot of people trying to unlock is around your processes. Different processes that have been working for a long, long time. We were in the past being able to only solve deterministic problems. You would write your codes, and that would solve a problem where whether it would be a yes or a no, or at least you would have a range of answer to select from. Most of the non-deterministic kind of thinking were only done by humans, right? Because that is like, you can have an answer as A, but even a B can be an answer as well. It's open-ended in many ways. Now, because of LLM models, those have become quite a big focus for the organizations. It's like, let's just see, things that we couldn't do earlier. How can we now solve these problems where, we required intelligence? We wanted our automations to be more autonomous. And those are the use cases where I see the organizations are really working a lot towards. And then there's this fourth element, which is, I don't think so it's a problem per se, but it's also about if we are to use LLMs and we are moving towards agentic and making them more autonomous, what would that actually mean for organizations and how we operate? Because if you look at all these big players, they're trying to make all of these models so smart so that they can become a peer. Whether they can help you with software engineering tasks or they can help you with other particular tasks. That is the intention. That's where the money is all going on, right? So if these models, let's say in the next 1, 2, or whatever numbers, let's not give it numbers actually, but let's say in the near future, they become so smart that they can really become your peers, then what would that mean for organizations? What would be the new mode of working? And that requires a lot of cultural change, a lot of process change, technology change, of course. And I think a lot of organizations, even they're thinking a lot about it. I don't know how much they've been able to implement, but there's a lot of awareness about that now.
I love how you broke it down into some really good silos, and I think you really hit it on the head. Obviously, there's the productivity pieces and there's the chatbots of the world, but also in organizations, as you said, everyone's looking at how can we improve the processes that we've got. But you're very right. I mean, as you know, we've got 2 other podcasts that are around cloud and AI, and that's something that we always talk about, that yes, as amazing as it is to have these automations. And of course, it's allowing businesses to do a lot more with a lot less automations there. People can scale a lot more. But what does that mean for the existing roles? Because they would have to morph. What does that mean for an engineer or for a programmer or for a security person? Like, how's that going to change? I don't think there's an answer yet. I think people are kind of still figuring out. And at the moment, obviously, AI is not fully autonomous as well. Like, it's still making a lot of errors
Yeah.
and stuff. But you're very right. Like, it is changing things, and there's so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see how, things change and how people, like the workforce changes and how we do different roles, like the nature of the roles would change as well. It'd be really interesting to see, where
Yeah.
everything goes.
And yeah, I mean, even if things are to change, I feel like within the engineering community, we engineers are very, very used to change,
Yeah.
right? We've seen languages changing, we're seeing our infrastructure constantly getting evolved. So we are kind of used to this change,
Yeah.
and I think AI obviously is going to bring change.
Yeah.
But I think people will kind of like, realize this new way of working
Yeah.
once it's a lot more defined properly and also working very well for the organizations as well. But yes, there can always be a small group of people who could be resistant to change, and that is something that could be challenging.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're right. Like, I mean, we've gone through so many waves of technology, like with cloud, the internet, obviously AI is the next one. It just feels a lot more palpable because I think it's happening a little bit quicker than what the previous technology waves have happened.
True.
Yeah, but as you said, like engineers and tech people have always been used to, like, there's a new programming language that comes up, or the cloud or the internet, and you just adapt to it. And yeah, like change is not for everyone, and change is scary for most people. So
Yeah.
I can completely empathize. I am more of an optimist, so I'd like to think that most of us will be able to, sort of take on board what's happening and kind of try to like make the most of it and
Yeah.
see how we can use it as a tool. Like same thing that we did with like the internet,
Yeah.
everything changed. Like there's so many great things that have come from it. Just being able to keep in touch with family overseas, like that was so hard back in the day. But now you can just video call anyone, anytime. And that's
Yeah.
because of technology. So with AI as well, a lot of small businesses are able to scale in ways that they could never. And it is not just the big enterprises that can
Yeah.
do a lot more things.
And I think also one conception people have is like, if AI comes as peers and they can do everything, would that mean that it will shrink my work and what I do for me, for my organizations, for people around me? And I have a very different view to that. I think it might just work in a very opposite way. Like, when you make something so productive, right? So instead of now you focusing on one piece of product, you will have an army of help to help you ship out maybe 5 or 6 different products in that same time scale.
Yeah.
So it could also become that we all get more busy
Yeah.
because now all of a sudden, all of us have these assistants or all of us have these really good engineering peers who
Yeah.
can write code, who can do code reviews for us and do all of that. So now we have time to not just think about that one problem which was taking me 3 months to solve. Now probably I can look at multiple problems that I can solve with the help of these people. So I can still be very, very busy
Yeah.
and still be very, very useful for the organization. It just might just explode. So I think it might go in that direction as well.
No, absolutely. Like, I agree with you because, funny enough, I mean, this podcast is a great example. I've been wanting to do something for a while, but it's only this year because of AI, because we've been able to automate certain parts of the business which were more routine and mundane, that it's open capacity for the team to be able to explore all these things that we wouldn't have time for. So I definitely agree that it would open people's, time up for doing things that they always wanted to but never had time.
Never
'cause,
had the time. Your backlog was piling up and you never had time for it.
Yeah.
Now you can.
Yeah, no,
Get things moving much faster in your backlog.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Spinning off just what we've been talking about, like, there are a lot of new people coming into engineering nowadays, and it can be kind of like a daunting world because everything's changing so quickly. You've been doing it for a very, very long time, and now you're in a leadership position as well. Are there things that you would advise to them that, coming into the industry right now, these are the things that you should be focusing on? Or what is the mindset that people need to have coming into engineering in like 2026?
I think if you are coming into engineering at 2026, first of all, you have so much at your disposal in order to upskill yourself. You have these great LLM models, you have YouTube, you have so many free resources, first of all, out there. Do not really pay and, just be siloed in one kind of course that you're trying to do. So let's say if you've done your majors in engineering, but you also want to understand, a bit more about how these LLM models have been built, what are the basic algorithms that were used, but not doing like spending 2 years doing that,
Yeah.
but you want quick answers. I think you have all levels of resources out there to get that information, depending on what level what, how much deep you want to get into it. So I would recommend that choose your, like, whether you want to be a front end developer, you want to be a back end developer, you want to do something in UI or whatever space, in Android, iOS. But with that, just keep in mind that these AI tools, these code assist tools, they're going to be there. They are the future. So you need to have at least some level of underlying knowledge about how they have been built, how they kind of operate. That doesn't mean you need to nail and be an expert in transformer, attention, and all of these algorithms, but on a high level, you really need to have that understanding as well. And most of the Gen Zs, in fact, I'm seeing that they are more switched on when it comes to these tools.
Yeah.
They're using it more than us.
Yeah.
They're not only using it for work, but they're using it a lot in their personal lives
Yeah.
as well. So continue doing that, right? Because if you are quite switched on, you will be well aware of, what are the new advancements that are coming. Every time these LLM models are getting upgraded, just see the release notes, what's really happening on a high level. Keep that in mind. And yeah, I think obviously have the basics for what it means, the concepts of object-oriented programming and coding and everything, but also start looking a level up as well, which maybe wasn't never a requirement early on. Like, you would start with just writing codes for 1 or 2 years. And then, once you've done that, then you would become a slightly senior engineer and you would get more understanding of system designs and architecture. But I would say start looking at them now. I mean, it's not like it's a very complicated, coding is very easy and that is very difficult. It's not like that. If a code assist tool can write the codes for you, then maybe you need to start thinking about the system designs and other things. And that could become your starting base rather than early on you spending years and then getting to a stage where you could do all of this.
Yeah.
So that would be some of my suggestions if you are looking for a career in engineering.
Yeah, no, that's actually very poignant. I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, that because earlier on, I think you had to spend in any career, I mean, a lot of years just learning the foundations because it was so hard to do the foundations. But now, as we were talking about, like because of AI and LLM, a lot of time has opened up, like for people as well. Like, we can use a coding assistant, but that opens you up to have a little more time to think about, architecture and all of those things. So you're very right. It's kind of taking that mindset, like you're coming into a world where a lot more is available to you. So how do you shift that mindset? Because workplaces would expect more as well. I think now going into an entry level role, because workplaces know there is AI, they probably will expect you to know a little bit more, be a bit more creative with your time as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I think few of the skills like around critical thinking. And you need these skills when you are probably putting a system designs where you have 10 different options laid in front of you, right? And you have to use the most optimum choice for your setup, for your use case, right? So things like then, when you start doing more of this, you will eventually find out that you're doing more critical thinking, you're making more decisions. And another piece of advice I would actually give to young people is socialize. Just don't be boxed behind your laptops and podcasts and books and everything. Interpersonal relationships are very, very important. And I think they're only going to get more and more important going forward as well, because there's everything in this digital space to keep us busy and consumed.
Yeah.
So do focus on that, the interpersonal, human to human kind of interactions as well. And it doesn't always have to be work related. It could be you're just still going out and playing your sports.
Okay.
You're still going out for a nice debate or drinks or, just meeting people, understanding the emotions, being able to comprehend. So do that. And I think every new joinee coming up, right, they will have lots and lots of opportunities for them.
No, that's so true because you're right. Like there's so much in the world today to just keep us behind a screen. Like whether you talk about entertainment, education, even connecting with people, you can, as I said, like literally do it over the phone. But actually meeting people human to human is so good. I think that's one of the reasons I've been loving doing this in person, because there's just something so nice about like sitting across someone and talking to them. Like as much as like, I appreciate all the conversations I have virtually as well, because sometimes, you just can't get into the same room. but there is something really good about sitting next to each other.
Yes.
And it's funny, it's something I read while we were going through the pandemic, is human beings actually like get a different sort of like serotonin hit when they see someone face to face. Apparently our minds are wired
Absolutely.
differently.
Absolutely.
So even if I saw you on a screen, I would not get the same happiness as I would if I was in front of you. So I totally agree. And I think I truly realized that when the whole pandemic was happening, because I was still like video calling friends and family, but I was like, it's just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
Even though the conversations are similar, I think the warmth that you feel by being in front of someone is so different.
Absolutely.
So like I think that's a really great shout out. Like as much as we talk about technology, it's good to sort of step away from it and just, do the human things as well. And I think you're segueing into something really good that I wanted to touch on as well. Obviously, this podcast is called Visible. And one of the reasons I started this is because I wanted to kind of touch on this whole attribute of how do you make yourself visible internally, externally. Stepping into any career, as you said, it's so important to just make those human connections. And putting yourself out there is kind of part of it. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a public figure, but even internally, just being able to put yourself out there. You've obviously had, a great career. You've stepped into leadership. What does the word visible mean to you, and how do you define it?
I think many things. I think we're all living in this world where we're constantly busy. People are just consumed every time with something or the other that is keeping them busy. And now, when you are working in organizations and workplace, you might be reporting into someone who's got a lot of people. You might be having a lot of people vertically, like horizontally as well, and then downstream and upstream. And it's constantly busy, right? And you might feel that the work that you're trying to do, it might just become really invisible, without you putting even any efforts towards that. So for me, it's being visible is you getting acknowledgement for the work that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And acknowledgement doesn't mean that it's always about recognition. It's about somebody praising you, but it's just like people are acknowledging what you're trying to do, because ultimately we all want to be remembered, right? In somebody's mind. And ultimately, I feel like we all also want to be referred at some point in our life, and people to endorse us and refer us as well. And I think that is why I think it really becomes very important that you are being visible. Now, I think different people have different styles of being visible. Some people are a bit shy and introvert, and for them, I've seen that they do a lot of contributions, and that could be contributions within your organization's own inner source, where you are not just making an impact within your own team and solving one particular type of problem, but you're also now extending that same piece of work that you have delivered for use for other people as well. So, a lot of introverts, they contribute towards inner source. A lot of people are writing open source as well. And then there are people who are comfortable, with the human to human interaction as well. So they will make it a point that, they will talk about, what they have accomplished, what they've done. But it's not just only about talking about your success, but also the journey towards that success as well.
Right.
So you're calling out, what your pitfalls were, where you failed, what you learned.
Yeah.
And I think when you are very honest and you are obviously making an effort to make yourself visible by connecting to people, whether it's one-to-one or in a short group, in a small group, or in a larger group as well, right? People do acknowledge that, yes, you've built something, rather than, it's just disappearing in thin air and only sitting in your code bases, right?
Yeah.
You're just highlighting. And you never know from that audience who do you end up helping and impressing as well. Yeah. So I think that's, for me, is what visibility is. I don't think so it should be something which you need to force yourself to do. Rather, it should be a habit. And choose your streams, right? It's not always about going and speaking in front of hundreds of people, but you can be visible even in your own world by making sure you extend your work to a wider audience.
Yeah, no, you're very right. I love the fact that you kind of touched on how it's different for everyone as well, because obviously we live in a very visible world from a perspective of social media being a big thing. There's YouTube, podcasts, all of those things. And one thing I definitely was hoping from this is that people shouldn't walk away thinking that, everyone has to build a public brand, because it's not for everyone. It requires a lot of effort, time, bandwidth, and it's not something that everyone has to do. So I think that's something that I definitely want people to hold on to, that it's not that everyone needs to do this, but it's just about how in your own way. And I think you gave some really good, like, tangible examples, like whether it's contributing in a community or just doing like small group things. And you never know what may come out of it. And
Exactly.
if you can impact someone's life, or someone learns from you, I mean, that's even a bigger bonus as well.
Yeah.
No, you're very, very right. Like, I think you've touched on something great, and I'm glad you kind of spoke about like the smaller things you can do as well. It's because I think the perception is you have to do these like grandiose things.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is always, and I think that is why a lot of people negatively associate visibility with, oh my God, I'll have to work hard or I have to do something
Yeah,
special now to make myself visible, or this is not for me. And that's what I tell people. Visible is not really always about being out there in the stage.
yeah,
There are different modes and ways you do it,
yeah,
whatever you feel comfortable with, so that you can turn this into a habit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on your journey, because I know I've seen you in quite a few panels now. You're kind of, really sharing, your journey. I was on a very good panel with you, and, you shared some very like real life use cases, things that people can attach themselves to. I'd love to hear from you, how you went about your journey of, starting to like share your learnings, what you've learned from it, because I would love for people to hear, what you've gone through, and if they can pick out some nuggets from there as well.
So I think my life I went through phases as well. When I initially started, obviously for me the most important thing at that point was like really making my base strong, learning a lot of fundamentals, and that often meant like that I had to go underground and spend 80% of my time just really upskilling myself as well. And I loved that. I loved doing it. And then after a point, like when I felt like, now I've learned a lot and now I need to start focusing on learning other aspects
Yeah,
about communications, about managing stakeholder engagements, critical thinking, decisions making as well. And I think that kind of naturally meant that you have to be visible, you have to do more than just being behind the camera and writing. And again, I used many ways of deploying that, like, sharing my resources, sometimes through scripts, sometimes through written texts, sometimes presenting, sometimes just bringing a group of people to brainstorm and giving me honest feedback about it. Building one to one relationships as well, sometimes even coming and going for different conferences and those kind of things. So it's always been like kind of like a mix.
yeah,
And in my mind, I don't like to think like, oh, I need to make a plan and I'm only going to do these things. I have always been a person who likes to go with the flow,
yeah,
and I like to sense and be aware, self aware of myself and my surroundings.
yeah,
And I think when you are self aware about what is it that you're missing and what is it that you want to learn, you will automatically know the path to do it.
yeah,
At some point in my career, I felt like for me, contributions were big and
yeah,
I focused on that. Right now, I feel I'm in my career where I want to learn so much more about AI.
yeah,
It's still a lot, it's still a new technology, even though I've been associated and worked in data science field as well. But this is a very different kind of AI, right? And what really worked for me was going out there, sharing my own experience and what I have done with AI. But when you're doing that, you're also encouraging people to come and speak to you as well. So you
yeah,
automatically learn a lot.
yeah.
So it's two ways. Like you share your learnings, but at the same time you learn from others as
That's
well. And for me, that has worked wonderfully,
yeah.
and I really enjoyed. So I kind of like to balance my work like that. At least I give like 10 to 15% of my efforts and time into doing things where I'm really collaborating. I'm going into events and activities where I'm learning from humans,
Yeah,
from interpersonal skills, learning on that, because I know I can pretty much do, I can read books and I can
yeah,
listen to podcasts and I can learn that way. So I try to balance it that ways. And I think all of that is kind of helping me with visibility. Again, I don't make it feel like a task to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
I go with the natural flow,
yeah,
and I think that is why you don't feel as like you're doing anything different.
yeah,
You just know that you're doing what you're passionate about.
yeah. Yeah, I think you touched on some like couple of really like things that I really like align to. And the first thing about just going with the flow, I think you're so right, because when you go on this path of, I'm going to do something for myself or for my career, or I want to learn more, you almost hold yourself accountable going, oh, I've got to do, I don't know, 5 talks this year or something. And it can be really draining. But also then you're not leaving room for like unexpected things when something exciting comes along and you're like, actually what, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I think growing up, like, I mean, I was definitely one of those people who was very like regimented and type A. And I think as I've grown older, I'm like, that doesn't really work with real life. Real life is not, it doesn't go
Yeah.
according to plan. So as much as it's like I always say, you should have like strong ideas but loosely held.
Yeah.
Like have a plan, but don't be like so
So
attached to
rigid
it.
about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's great advice for anyone who's listening. Like as much as, you may have a plan. I'm coming up to, end of year. A lot of people will have like 2026, I'm going to do blah, blah, blah. I think it's good to kind of take a step back and go, yeah, I want to do all these things, but I'll also be open to any opportunities that come my way because you
Yeah.
never know. And the whole notion that you mentioned about like, because you want to learn something, you're putting yourself out there. And I think that's such a beautiful notion because I think one of the reasons I started this is because I wanted to learn more about technology. And, like when I meet someone like you, I'm like, oh, what does an engineering leader do? Because I'm like, I've only been in tech for 7 years. Before this, I was in finance. And for me, it's been such an interesting world. And I meet all these amazing people. And I'm like, I wish I could just talk to them more. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start a podcast. So I have a good excuse to talk to people. But you're right. Like, you put yourself out in the world and you just learn so much more. And often you feel like I'm imparting my knowledge, but it's almost the opposite that, you get so much back.
Yeah.
So I think those are like two
And
incredible
similarly,
things.
I feel like, even people who you are calling on your podcast as well, they end up learning a lot more as well. Because I often feel like, sometimes you're asked questions on the fly and that kind of makes you think and go deep inside
Yeah,
to find those answers.
that's right.
And sometimes you will have those answers top of your mind and sometimes you don't. And okay, you know what? I want to go and find out why I don't know the answers to
Yeah,
that. I want to experience a bit more as well.
yeah,
So likewise, I think, it's equally a great learning experience, like, being here with you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, that makes me very happy that, it's, and you're right, like, conversations are such a powerful thing because it forces you to think differently, but also like, so often, like even with you, but, previous guests, like I've kind of gone, oh, you know what, like I never thought of this like this, but now that's kind of adjusted the way I'm thinking and my mind is open. So, and I think that's kind of like the reason why I really love podcasts because, you just get to find out these things. I mean, we may be talking about tech, but it's just such an interesting side to it. And yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that very, very much. I think one thing I know you spoke about, like, learning from others. And this is a question I've been asking about. Are there people, and you don't have to name names if you don't want to, but are you seeing stuff in your industry or peers or anyone where you kind of go, like, I feel like what this person's doing is great, or someone you look up to? Because I think just more stories to share.
Yes, I mean, obviously, you will come across a lot of people who you want to learn from a lot. And I like to go and reach out to those people out of curiosity. I'm curious to know, like, and there's no harm in doing that because people often also like,
Yeah.
that somebody's coming up to them and
Yeah.
then asking them for their advice as well. But I also feel like, at workplace, you only meet a person for a very short amount of time. So yes, you can learn like, when you're working on the go as well. But for me personally, I feel my biggest learnings have come from people I've spent the most time with, whether that's family or people who are part of my household as
Yeah.
well. And if I take an example, right, I have been lucky that I've had a help here to help me share the responsibilities for my daughter. So she kind of helps me look after my daughter when I'm at work, and she also supports me with some of the household work as well. And when she kind of joined, came and started working for me. So the first few weeks was like a learning curve for her to
Yeah.
understand how the household moves, what are my daughter's likes,
Yeah.
dislikes, what we just all generally like, what the routine and everything is. But after a period, what I really liked was like there would be days, when we would be away for an entire day, and I would just tell her that it's your day, take it easy, you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And in those times, like she actually would start prepping for, she would start making some recipes that I can have if I get a cold or my daughter gets a cold. She would start making some recipes that I could use over the weekends and freeze few things as well. And when I would come back and then she would tell me like, this is what I've done. And I was like, this is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
if we apply the same thing at
Yeah.
our workplace, right, where we are not only looking at solving the problem for today, but we're also thinking about and probably putting our contingencies plans as well for what we want to solve in the future as well,
Yeah.
and what can go wrong, and just prepping yourself up in advance and making sure that you are articulating these things and making them visible to the people who really care about it, and that could be your manager, that could be your co-workers as well, right? That would be great,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, it's these little things and these little interactions has really inspired me.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I think we overlook things,
Yeah,
but if you
absolutely.
go a bit deep down inside, you will see there's so much to learn, and there's so much patterns that you can actually apply in so many different places as
Yeah.
well, whether it's workplace, your personal life. Yeah, and this was just one of the examples again that came top of my mind.
Yeah, no, that is a great example. It's funny because yesterday we met with some people in cybersecurity and we were talking about something very aligned that, how cybersecurity is one of those fields, like a lot of people come from very different places. Everyone transitions from a different industry, and we were talking about like forensics and like, threat detection and all of those things. And a couple of people said they've actually hired people who've done like customer service or emergency services, and they've actually been some of the best like detection engineers, and because they just come from that mindset because they're so used to problem solving on the go, being high under pressure. And I love the fact that you actually used an example which was not like something from LinkedIn or something in tech, because people have these great skills in so many careers, right? And you
Absolutely,
kind of look
yeah.
at that and go, as you said, if I apply that same mindset to tech, engineering, cybersecurity, like you can, I mean, it's just a whole new world. Like, and it's easy to understand as well, like, because you've given it as such a beautiful example. It could be an analogy. It's sometimes does help to sort of step outside. I think that's one of the reasons why I love like being in London as well, because it's so multicultural, but also like
Absolutely.
everyone works in all these different fields as well. We're not in a tech silo, so it's good to like talk to someone who's working in beauty or in an accountant or doing something completely different. And you go, oh, like they're doing things in an interesting way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm so glad you gave an example which was not like tech related, but it sounds like you've got a great person in your life as well. I'm kind of jealous. I'm like, I need this person in my life.
She's definitely like a lifesaver. Yeah.
Yeah, no,
And a wonderful person.
okay, we'll definitely give her a shout out. Maybe we can send her a copy of this episode. Parinita, honestly, I can keep talking to you about like so many things. Like I think time just flies. And I think you come from such a world of knowledge, but also I think I love how you have this beautiful way of like relating things really simply and being very grounded with the world around us. I do have 3 questions that I like to end with. I know I've been saying like they're fun questions, but I think they're more like, I don't know, like thought provoking. I'll come up with like a better name by season 2. If you were speaking to Parinita, the younger Parinita today, what are some pieces of advice that you would give her?
If I was speaking to a young Parinita, I wished she had the wisdom of what she does now with the age in front of her. That would be amazing. But I would advise Parinita to take more risks in life. Don't fear away from that. I think risks, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the rest pretty much, I feel like I'm a continuation of what I was.
yeah.
Yeah, that
No,
would be my advice.
I like the fact, like, have today's wisdoms, but the youth. From like that, I always say, like, I wish I knew what I know now 20 years ago, but have the body and
at
the mind
exactly, the body and the mind.
of a 20-year-old. Yeah, like, I would love that. But, I can totally empathize with that. But, yeah, taking risks, like, you only get one life, right? And risks are scary. And, but in the long term, like, sometimes taking that plunge just, gives really great results as well. So I
Yeah.
think,
Because I think, the younger we are, like, we are exposed to certain things, but we're not exposed to a lot of things as well, right? And that could make the whole risk appetite very, very small. And now when I look back, I'm like, yeah, maybe, if I wanted to take big risks in my life, I could have. The worst would have happened is like I would have failed and I would have learned. That is anyways, you doing a lot of that
Yeah.
continuously in your life. So yeah, be more open to risks, I would say.
Yeah.
But obviously calculated risk,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
not going wild.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah, no, we're not asking anyone to take. It's like Parinita said, take more risks.
But yeah, definitely calculated risks. But yeah, be more open to it. But that would be a very personal advice for myself.
Yeah, fair. Something that you're really grateful for today. Obviously, the person who makes amazing food for you, but outside of that.
I am grateful for so many things in my life. That the fact that I'm here, I've been able to manage my work, I've been able to also give all the attention and love for my daughter, and just seeing her grow up is such a pleasure. I'm grateful for such a great family support that I have as well. I'm grateful for my organization as well, because they've been constantly supporting me, giving me the opportunity to do what I'm passionate about. I think I can go on the list. I'm so grateful about many things. And I think that is why my former answer that, like, you have so much going for you that it's okay if people want to take certain risks and do something different in their lives. You have a good base to fall back on.
Yeah, that's good. I love this question because I feel like life is all about gratitude, right? And so whenever I ask this to my guests and they respond, it just fills me with so much joy because we are mostly quite lucky. We all have so much to be grateful for. So I'm happy that you've got such a long list of the things and may it keep growing.
Yeah, and often, like, people are always thinking about the next thing, the next thing that they want. And it's good to think about it because, that means you're passionate and you are going to do something towards it. But you have to be really grateful for where you are in your life currently. There's so many things which could have gone wrong or are probably not working for a lot of other people. So definitely feel really lucky from that perspective.
Absolutely. And the last question is, what is something that you're looking forward to?
Something that I'm looking forward to. So few things. First, if I talk about my career, I want to grow myself on that leadership position. I also want to be in a space where, I'm more closer and more impactful as well when whether I'm trying to solve a business problem or I'm trying to solve a customer problem. Again, obviously using my expertise and everything. Second, I want to see my daughter flourish into this beautiful girl, and hopefully if I'm able to navigate her life and give her the right kind of resources and wisdom from my side so she becomes a strong, independent woman. The third, I really want that I can make a system where my parents are they're aging, they have everything at their disposal. I know I can't really spend a lot of time with them, but yeah, maybe if I can build a system where I get to be connected with them in whatever ways, whether it's virtual or in person sometimes, but also like, making the rest of the life very comfortable for them.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So those are the few things I would like to
Just
work
a few
towards.
things. Sounds like you've got a busy few years ahead of you. But no, thank you so much. I mean, as I said, I can keep talking to you. I feel like we barely scratched the surface of many things, but that's the nature of these things. The conversations can keep going. But thank you so much for coming on the show and
thank you
sharing so openly as well. If people do want to connect with you, what's the best place to do that?
You can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. I do have my profile over there. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much quite active over there. So that would be the best place to get in touch with me.
Perfect.
I love mentoring. So if you think today's session was insightful for you, if there's any way I can be of any help, I would love to be part of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm sure, people will get a lot of value from this and you might get some reach outs as well. But thank you so much. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of The Visible. Hopefully you'll join us for the next one. We'll see you then. Thank you for listening to The Visible, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to continue to listen to us every week, you can follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. And if you would like to watch us on video, you can find us on YouTube as well. Join us every week as we continue to uncover more stories on how great ideas come to life. We will see you next week.